On the green fence. On the green fence.
The first word that something was seriously wrong came from this power plant in eastern Sweden.
In the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant in the city of Kiev was
Diese Bilder werden in die Geschichte eingehen. Die Welt blickt nach Japan.
Fukushima 2011. An earthquake triggers a tsunami.
An explosion was heard and smoke seen at the...
Germany has announced it'll close all of its nuclear power stations within 10 years.
The plan marks a U-turn by the Chancellor Angela Merkel.
The events in Japan have changed my opinion on nuclear energy.
The seizure of the Zaporizhia site, which is Europe's largest nuclear power facility, posed a serious threat to Ukraine and NATO.
In
the current situation, I think we need to let the remaining nuclear power plants run a little longer, until we've gotten through the energy crisis.
Nuclear is insignificant in Germany. It's not helping in the gas dilemma.
If we have them already running, I feel that it's a mistake to close them down in order to focus on coal.
The risk of getting cancer for children, like leukemia, is double high as in the rest of the Bundesrepublik.
They don't follow the science, or they use parts of it, what they need.
Hello everybody, my name is Neil King.
And this is Kristie Pladsen.
And welcome to this second episode of our Road Trip Energy series.
And as you maybe just heard in our opener there, this time we'll be taking a look at nuclear energy in Germany. This is something back on the agenda because of the current energy crisis.
Yeah, some say that we're going to need nuclear to get through the winter without any blackouts. And to be fair, it is a fear that's certainly being fueled by the media as well.
Blackout. Mögliche Blackouts ist vorstellbar. Wir erleben das ja gerade.
Totalausfall.
Blackout. Ein Stromausfall über mehrere Tage.
Blackout drohen könnte, dass die Lichter ausgehen.
Der Blackout, der ganz große System.
Yeah, surveys are suggesting actually that over half of Germans are worried to very worried about the possibility of blackouts this winter. And authorities in Germany are giving a bit of a mixed message about how likely those are. On the one hand, they're trying to talk down the risk, but at the same time, they're also advising people to stock up on emergency staple supplies.
Yeah, and Germany's Federal Office for Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance, or BKK for short, they've actually advised that households stock up on, let me just get this list right, coal, briquettes, wood, and also make sure that there's warm clothing, blankets, flashlights, candles, matches, or lighters on hand. I'm going to end there. Kristie, are you sorted for the winter? Have you stocked up on these things?
I have ordered exactly 6 candles. They're long burning, though.
That's a short blackout.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know if I'm optimistic or just not preparing too much. What about you?
Well, actually, I have been always a little bit of a, well, I wouldn't say prepper, but it goes in that direction, you know. So to be honest, I've always had a bit of a storage system going on, you know, with tin food, water, got a hand chargeable radio at home that, you know, you can just turn and it charges. Got lighters, loads of candles, yeah.
Very Boy Scout of you, always be prepared. But coming back to the episode, it's against the backdrop of these blackout fears as well as rising energy costs that, calls are growing in Germany to keep the last 3 nuclear power plants running. They were actually supposed to be phased out at the end of this year. So after months of political wrangling, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz from the Social Democrats, he gave the executive order to extend all 3 plants until April 2023.
And so in this episode, we're going to be looking at why this, rather minor delay, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Why is this such a big deal in Germany? And also, just how great the risk of blackouts really is.
Yeah, and we're also going to be looking at how green and how safe nuclear power is and whether Germany's Zeitenwende, or political reset, which has been triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, could lead to a renaissance of nuclear power here.
Yeah. But of course, this is a road trip after all. So, we will be heading into the car now. Time to join us on our way to Lingen. That's in Lower Saxony, and it's home to the AKW Emsland. That's one of the 3 remaining nuclear power plants that are still operating in Germany.
But first, we need to refuel the car. We did burn a lot of fuel on this trip, I have to say, Neil. We'll have to crunch the numbers on that later.
Maybe do some offsetting.
Yeah, exactly. But we need to refuel, and rising energy prices were also quite clear when we stopped at the pump. Oh, it's there. Okay. Yeah, what do we got?
€2.02 per litre. That's a lot.
How is this compared to past prices?
Most of the year before the crisis, before Ukraine, I think I was paying maybe like $1.30, $1.40. With Corona, it went up again. But yeah, I mean, it's not quite double yet, but it's almost double compared to a couple of years ago.
Right. You drive a lot?
Well, I try not to. All right, okay, go inside and pay then. I'll be back in it.
Right, so as this was recorded, Germans were paying about 80 cents more per liter of gas compared to Americans. And after Neil had paid and got back in the car, he went on a little bit of a rant, I have to say, about how gas companies, petrol companies, for any Brits out there, had cashed in on a recent government rebate scheme, which was supposed to help commuters. But then I got him to refocus a bit on the nuclear thing. And you had a lot to say about that, I have to say.
Well, you were asking for it.
Okay, what were you saying about the nuclear debate?
The one thing that really has always turned me off about the nuclear debate from day one, I mean, personally also, I wasn't for the nuclear phase-out. I thought it was too rushed, like a knee-jerk reaction to Fukushima. I did not like it, how it went down. But the whole ideology, you know, I don't think there's any debate in Germany that is so ideologically burdened as the nuclear debate is. And it's something... the positions are so entrenched, and with some people you just can't even argue about it. It's you know, they know exactly how they're going to come out of a conversation. There's no open conversation about it. It's just about everybody proving their point.
What are, in your own words, what are the two camps that won't budge?
Well, the one side is that nuclear is like Pandora's box that we should never have opened, and close it down as fast as possible, no matter what. Doesn't matter what the ramifications are. If we have power shortages, never mind, just get rid of it. It's too dangerous, too risky. And the other side is the other extreme that says nuclear, there's no risk. There's so many safety measures in place. German nuclear power plants among the safest in the world. Nothing's ever really happened that was really serious. Never came close even. And nuclear waste, there's not that much of it, and we can store it underground. It's not a problem. Yeah. So both sides obviously, yeah, I mean, both are right and both are wrong. So and that's the thing, you know, I think it's somewhere in the middle, the center ground, but there is no center ground on this.
Yeah, I mean, where are you on it? How do you feel about it?
I would keep nuclear until we've phased out coal. I think if the climate crisis, if you take it really seriously and CO2 is killing this planet, that's what we have to go after first. We have to bring down those CO2 levels. And coal is definitely emitting more CO2 emissions than any nuclear power plant. So for me, that is clear. I would first of all do the coal phase out, expand renewables as much as possible, and until then, I certainly wouldn't get rid of the existing nuclear power plants that can still operate safely.
So sort of like a transition technology to some degree.
Yeah. A bit like the role that we've envisaged for gas.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, what you're saying.
Which is now falling apart, that role, more or less.
Yeah, so let's take a step back and have a look at the carbon footprint of nuclear compared to other forms of energy. Now, Neil, you were saying in the car that you personally would choose to keep nuclear going and phase out coal first because of the carbon footprint.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the figures, right, so even if you take into account the entire life cycle of nuclear power plants, from uranium extraction to nuclear waste storage, the lot, you know, it still does a lot better than fossil fuels regarding the carbon footprint. And yeah, I mean, the data, it does vary considerably depending on which study you look at. So for instance, let's just go with a life cycle study by a Dutch-based anti-nuclear group called WISE. So that would probably be the worst case scenario, at least that's what I'm assuming here. And they calculated that nuclear plants produce 117 grams of CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour. Now, lignite is at just over 1,000 grams, and natural gas is at about 440 grams per kilowatt hour. So nuclear is still doing rather well in terms of the climate.
Oh, yeah, we have to keep in mind that it's still a lot worse than renewables, of course. Photovoltaics are at 33 grams, and onshore wind is at 9 grams of CO2 emissions per kilowatt hour. And we can't forget that nuclear power has the highest production cost of all of those. It takes a long time not just to build these plants, but also to get rid of them.
Time we bring in our first protagonist, what do you reckon?
Definitely. So his name is Alexander Wendt. He's from Lingen, and he's an anti-nuclear activist with the campaign group AgiEL. And we met up with him in Lingen right outside the nuclear fuel rod factory owned by the French company Framatome, which we learned is still receiving uranium from Russia. Because we discovered that even though Germany has all these sanctions on Russia since the war started, uranium is actually still exempt.
Maybe Alexander, we've never been here. We don't know our way around. You're going to give us a tour, because you also give guided tours, right, to citizens who are interested in nuclear?
Yes, we do.
All right, well, lead on. We'll just follow you then.
Okay, I think it's the best way to start here, because we walk the way of the uranium. For Lingen, it starts here at the nuclear rod factory, and then it goes to the power plant.
Just one question on the outset. Do you by any chance have one of these devices that you can measure radiation with, like a Geigerzähler, I think it's called in German?
Yes, we do have something at home. I'm also engaged in the Bund.
It's an environmental group, the Bund.
That's it. And they have several places where they measure radioactivity around Lingen. Mm-hmm. It's an own network just to control the official measurements.
Right.
But I don't have this one of those small devices for measuring everything. I don't have it.
Right. Because, radiation is something, it is natural, yeah? It does happen in nature. Would the levels be higher here right now?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so you do have faith that in the plant that it is safe for now?
Yes, but you never know. I remember 3 or 4 years ago there was a fire inside this factory, and the people didn't know what exactly was burning. And the organization, they said, well, it's only a little fire and it's not in the nuclear section. And then 2 hours later they said, oh, well, it was a mistake. It is in the nuclear section, but we don't know exactly what is burning. And there was, several hours where the whole city stopped breathing, because if there is a fire here and they have really toxic stuff in there, it would be a giant problem for the whole city. It's not mainly because of the radioactivity, it's because of the chemical structure. They work with uranium hexafluoride. It's a chemical binding also.
Compound?
Compound, and reacts very fast with humidity, even from air or water. And then it reacts to Flusssäure. That is, I think, the most aggressive acid you can imagine.
Okay.
And if this comes over the city like a cloud or so, there would be a giant problem.
Were people leaving the city?
I don't know.
You stayed here?
Yes. I had an eye on the weather forecast and the wind forecast just to see where the wind blows. The wind was blowing in the other direction, not into the city, but onto the countryside. Okay. And I just phoned some friends who live there on the countryside to prepare them.
All right, Alex. Well, thanks for that for starters.
The uranium hexafluoride, it comes by lorries 2-3 times a week. And the sender is the Russian Rosatom, which is the biggest nuclear complex in Russia. And these are exactly those people who coordinated the thing in Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, where Russia went and took the power plant, and it was coordinated by people from Rosatom. And these are the people who Framatome makes deals with. And that's another point we are very shocked about.
Okay, so Alex, if we're following the road now, the trail, when you do your tour, is there any way, to get closer to the cooling tower?
Yes,
or which is your normal route when you do the tour?
Yes, we go by car. It's about 5 minutes. Yes.
Oh, we have to drive. Okay, let's hop in the car. Do you want to drive with us?
Okay.
You're going to have to direct me then a bit, Alex, how to drive.
Okay.
Because we have somebody doing the navigation here. She's called Fiete. She's our sat-nav. She's been doing a grand job so far, but twice she's let me down. So please,
okay,
I'm relying on you. We've been trying to get hold of somebody who will speak for this plant. We've contacted RWE, the operator. We contacted the Bürgermeisteramt. Nobody wants to talk to us.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, well, in the current climate, things are very unsure right now as to what's going to happen with these power plants, and it's too fluid, the situation.
Well, I think there are some things going on which are not very popular. For example, the uranium deal with Rosatom.
Yeah.
This is a French company, Framatome.
Yeah.
And so we have that French-Russian uranium deal right here in Lingen. And I think it's very much in the middle of the news these days. The embargoes against Russia and what we try to make us independent from Russia.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all this, Framatome and Rosatom are dealing with uranium right here in the middle of this town.
Right.
And so this is not very popular. I think they don't really like to talk about it in public.
Okay, so now we're right outside the power plant. It's the first time I've ever been so close to a nuclear power plant.
It's very impressive, isn't it?
It is very impressive.
Yeah. So I think the first thing you can see, even when you're still 30 kilometers away, is the big white cloud.
We thought it was a tornado from very far away. It looked like, but then we saw it's going from bottom to top, so it's not a tornado. But it looked like, it looked impressive.
The people who live here are very familiar to this cloud. This power plant is over 30 years old now, and they also have problems with the material. They found cracks during the last years in the maintenance.
But I mean, you have authorities closely monitoring this, right? I mean, it's probably one of the most closely monitored energy sectors, right? Nuclear power.
But according to those cracks, in the last year maintenance, they said, well, we don't have a look at the cracks.
Why?
Because they said, well, we know that they were there last year, and we changed a little bit of water chemistry, and so we think it will be all right now, and so we don't have to look at the tubes.
Have you ever been inside?
No.
Would you like to go inside?
Well, I'm not sure why. I mean,
find out more about it, get the inside view.
Yeah, it could be interesting, but I think I'm much happier when I don't have to go in.
I've been looking at some of the stats, and nuclear energy in Germany accounts for about 6 to 7% of the electricity mix right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we have to get through this winter, right? We've got to squeeze. I mean, do you think those 6 to 7% could be easily found like that if we, go to 1st of January and switch everything off, or where they're supposed to come from? Can we build renewables that fast? Because, I mean, getting a windmill off the ground here or a wind turbine can take years.
Yes, but we don't have only windmills. We have many windmills, and if you see those offshore windmills, they produce electricity really 24 hours, 24/7.
But there again, we were told that it can take even longer with offshore planning. The permission, it could take a decade to get a wind park offshore, just to get the license and the permissions going in Germany.
Yeah. That's it, but I think, as you said, it's only 6% of the power we take from nuclear plants. It's only 6%, and we have over 50 this year, and last year over 50% by the renewables. And so I think it would be easy to replace those 6% from renewables and from other sources. All the German politicians are talking about nuclear power and prolonging, yes or not. And nobody is talking about building up new renewable energy plants from wind and from sun. And that's a big problem, and we should have started 10 years earlier with that.
How did you become engaged with this topic? Why did it become so important to you?
Well, it was after the fire in the nuclear rod factory. There was a demonstration in the city, and then I met some people, and they said, "Hey, well, what are you doing here?" And we said, "Well, we are all Lingeners. Let's build up a group of Lingeners," and so that's what we did. And then we started working with it, and we've been growing up from year to year. Now we are a big group of people. And
how many?
Well, it's 30 people or so who work with it.
So is that when you became engaged with the anti-nuclear movement, or were you always?
No, I was already engaged when I was a child, with my parents who went here for demonstration. So I can remember those years when it wasn't there, and when they built it up, and they came with the big machines, and they built up the high fences and that stuff, and the protest of the people. That's what I remember very, very good, very well, in the 80s.
Have you, because of what you're doing, have you lost any friends, or have people cut you off because you're basically campaigning against their livelihoods?
No.
You don't know anybody who works in this plant then, or?
Well, I don't know. Well, there are no people. Yes, in the group of my friends who work here, I do know people who work here, but. We can sit in the bar, in the pub, and drink a beer together. That's not the problem.
You just don't talk about nuclear power.
That's it.
You really have to avoid that subject.
Yes. I mean, I would talk about it, but most of the people avoid it.
Do you think those people believe in nuclear power, or is it just about having a job here?
I could imagine that they really believe in this. I mean, it's a giant technical and it's a masterpiece of technical stuff what you see here. And if you go there every day, and if you see all those systems and this, I think it's very impressive. And they really think that is safe and it is good. But the people who work here, I think they don't have a look to the other side, and they wouldn't try to understand us, for example, or the people who have arguments against.
So what could a compromise look like? If you say both sides, have to listen to each other, can there be a compromise on this, or is it just black and white?
I think it's just black and white. It is really, really important that people get an own opinion, make their own opinion, and exchange it.
Let's just assume now, if this plant were brand new, no cracks, all perfect, how would you feel about it? Would you feel better about it?
No.
Why not?
Not much. Because there is another point. If you live in an area of 5 kilometers around any nuclear power station, the risk of getting cancer for children, like leukemia, is double high as in the rest of the Bundesrepublik.
There are studies on that, are there?
There are studies, and they are published by the Bundesregierung.
By the federal government?
Yes, and it's a really big study. It took about several years, and they looked at every power station in Germany, and they counted the leukemia cases, and they said at the end they had to say, okay, the risk is doubled if you live near a power station. Double.
In children, leukemia, yeah.
Do you have children?
Yes, 2 children. 8 and 13 years old. 2 girls.
I mean, I've got 3 kids as well. You have like regular checkups with the doctor.
Yeah.
Is that something that, I don't know, that you tell your doctor maybe? Sort of, hey, please check the blood values. I want my kids' blood values checked.
Well, I do think about it sometimes, but I haven't done it yet.
Alex, thank you very much for your time today. Well, let's hop in the car then and we'll drop you back.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that study that Alex referred to is from 2007, and it was by the German Federal Office for Radiation Protection and is often referred to as the so-called KIC study, which stands for Childhood Cancer in the Vicinity of Nuclear Power Plants. And we had a look at it, and it is true that this study showed that children under the age of 5 who live within a 5-kilometre radius of a nuclear power plant have twice the risk of developing leukemia. However, the problem here is that this is statistically rather shaky because in the period observed, 2 children developed leukemia per year, and in the comparison group there was only 1. So, those figures
speak for themselves a little.
And also the actual radiation exposure of the children was not recorded, but only the place of residence and its distance from the nuclear power plant. So
right, so maybe take that one with a little pinch of salt. But I mean, talking about health risks is a good point. And I think it's interesting that nuclear power, statistically, it does cause far fewer deaths than air pollution, right? Which is largely caused by fossil fuels. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry and the University Medical Center Mainz calculated that air pollution kills an estimated 24,000 people every day. So that's like 6 Chernobyls per day, deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But the safety aspect also, I mean, that reminds me of one of the chats we had in the car on our way to Lingen.
All right, let's have a listen to that.
I mean, I know that, from my father, who was an engineer, who was also working as an engineer building plants, also nuclear power plants. He was always saying that the European power plants in general, the German ones in particular, super safe. And that there's so many safety measures that so much would have to go wrong for anything to lead to a nuclear accident, like the style of Chernobyl or that. And he said that's unthinkable in German power plants. That's what he always said.
That was back then.
That was back then, yeah.
So I'm saying in terms of the technology's gotten better,
Well, the technology, I guess, well, that's the thing. I think Germany has probably lost its lead on the technology, right? Because they're not investing in it anymore. And a lot of these nuclear power plants are now quite old.
Sure. But overall, nuclear technology will have advanced since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just not the Germans who've got the know-how anymore. It's probably then more the French. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not particularly scared of a nuclear accident in Germany. Are you?
Germany, no. But I mean, I mentioned to you more just the idea of like, in a war situation, what if a rocket strikes a nuclear plant, targets it? That was something I had never really thought about. And then I was like, that's freaky. But I mean, I'll admit I don't actually know really anything about that. It was just something that with Ukraine's issue with their plant. Then I suddenly became sensitive to that as a risk, that when you are nuclear power, you are vulnerable in that way, militarily.
But I think that the greater risk is actually a blackout, because these nuclear power plants, they have to be cooled, right? So, for instance, if there were like a widespread blackout and it took a long time for us to get things up and running again, we will need fossil fuels to cool these nuclear power stations, like they have these diesel generators, right? And I remember reading a book on this. It was fictional, but it was very well researched. And the scenario was that there was like a weeks-long blackout, and that then everything basically just supply chains just broke down, and that some of these power plants who needed the diesel to be cooled ran out of diesel. And then, obviously, if it can't be cooled, then you have a nuclear meltdown.
Okay, so let's take a closer look now at the official stats regarding just how safe Germany's nuclear power plants really are. Because there is a central register for all incidents, and the severity is determined via the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale, or INES, which goes from 0 to 7, with 7 being a major accident like Chernobyl, and 1 being merely an anomaly.
Yeah, and if you look at these figures for Germany, I mean, at first sight, they are really alarming. There have been almost 4,800 reportable incidents in the 6-decade history of nuclear power in Germany. That's without the former East or GDR, by the way. And over 400 in the last remaining reactors alone. There's those 3 that are just being extended, right? However, incidents are not accidents, and the vast majority of these incidents qualified as small anomalies without any radiation being set free. And just a few more figures here. 33 were level 1, and only 3 were level 2, never higher. And never did we reach the accident level here in Germany.
Okay, yeah, I would say in Germany at least. I mean, in the U.S., where I'm from, we had a level 5 accident in 1979 in Pennsylvania. You might have heard of it, 3 Mile Island.
It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare. As far as we know at this hour, no worse than that.
Middletown, Pennsylvania is on edge tonight.
There was a mindset throughout the industry.
Highways are backed up and telephones are jammed.
A major accident could never happen.
Critical questions.
Oh yeah, I saw an interesting documentary series on that just a few months ago, actually. And yeah, that was a really quite a close shave. It was like a partial meltdown, right, where the reactor core was damaged. And yeah, also what was quite shocking about this documentary that the true extent of the damage was hushed up to begin with.
Right. Well, talking about accidents, we know better than anyone that accidents can happen, Neil, right?
I knew you'd bring that one up.
What was that beep that just went off?
Something with the air pressure on one of the tires. I'm actually not sure, but one of them is down by half a bar to 1.7. It should be at 2.2 or 2.3.
Yeah, all the others are above 2.
Oh, what's this? Look at this.
Oh no! What is it?
It's a screw or a nail.
Oh no.
And the only reason it's not losing air fast is because it's stuck in there.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what happened. On our way to our second interview, the car alerted us that one of the 4 tires had significantly less pressure than the others and that we needed to check it out.
The back right tire.
You were traumatized by it. I can tell you remember it in stark detail. Yeah, basically saying check it out as soon as possible. We kind of thought, okay, can we find a petrol station? There wasn't one. We decided to risk it and try making it to the interview. Neil contacted roadside assistance, ADAC, and yeah, he was waiting for them to call back. We did make it to our interview subject. That was Franz-Josef Tiering, who used to work in the nuclear industry and actually retired the very week we spoke to him. So while we were waiting for roadside assistance to get back to us, we did start the interview.
I think we show in Germany for more than 40 years using nuclear power plants that it's possible to do it. In these 40 years, nobody, there was nothing with people. I don't like to say nobody died. There was nothing. It's safe in Germany. That's my opinion.
Maybe you can say here in Lingen, in your experience, what is the attitude towards nuclear here?
I think because the people in Lingen know nuclear power energy for 30 or 40 years, they are not against it. That's what I can say. They accept it.
They don't feel worried or nervous.
Don't be worried about it. Lingen is an industrial city. Lingen is very rich compared to all the other cities around us. So the people see that there is a relation between industrial jobs to earn money, to have a lot of taxes. So I'm sure the people in Lingen accept nuclear.
So from all I'm taking away what you're saying, you're not worried in the least about this plant. It's safe.
No.
And it would be okay to run it for another, I don't know, how many years could it go for?
Yeah, I don't like to say in years because so long we need the nuclear power, we need electrician power.
So the plant produces also nuclear waste? Yes. What happens to the waste that's produced here?
As all the other German nuclear power plants has to do, there is a storage on site. Germany has a special position. We have normally the best position for all countries who uses nuclear power plants because we have salt, we have tone, I don't know.
You think it's clay?
I think it's clay.
That's your job.
We'll fact check.
And the third is granite. So, granite. In Germany, the idea for a long time was to use salt. It was in Gorleben. It's a political decision to say it's not good enough. And the decision for storage for Germany will be taken. The next step is 2030. I think in 2030 they will take the decision where.
But then, during our chat with Franz-Josef, Neil's phone rang. In one of these.
Okay.
Oh, that's the ADAC.
That's the ADAC. Oh, what's that?
They gave up.
My phone's just died.
No way.
Yeah, and it was the ADAC guy, and just as I was about to answer the phone, it died on me.
And of course, we didn't have the right phone charger with us. Franz-Josef didn't either. Neil ended up going outside and just trying to physically find the ADAC truck without a phone because the car was actually parked somewhere else because we couldn't find Franz-Josef's address.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, everything was just so messy at this point. But anyway, in the end, the ADAC mechanic, he did turn up. We found each other, and I waved him over to my car, and yeah, he got to work. Schnell stopfen. I have to close the hole quickly. And because the repairs took a while, we got chatting, and I ended up asking him about the energy crisis. I thought I might as well use the opportunity, right?
Right.
Während Sie arbeiten, wie stehen Sie denn zu der Energiekrise? Haben Sie da Gedanken zu?
Recht wenig, weil ich habe Wärmepumpe, Photovoltaikanlage auf dem
I don't really think that much about it. I've just built a brand new house with a heat pump and photovoltaics. I moved in 3 months ago. And this may sound a bit harsh, but I couldn't care less about the whole energy crisis right now. I'm kind of independent, and the rising costs don't affect me that much. Of course, I had to pay a pretty penny for this. The government subsidized heat pumps and renewables, but you still have to pay the lion's share yourself.
Wird natürlich mit gefördert, aber das meiste zahlt man selber.
And I thought that was kind of interesting that this rather young mechanic, he wasn't worried at all. He was really zen about everything. He'd basically already gone and done all that the government is pushing for, with its energy transition here in Germany. So that's, for instance, heat pumps, a couple with photovoltaics. He had all that sorted, and he was super, super relaxed.
Okay, well, I'm glad that he was feeling so relaxed in that moment because meanwhile, you left me inside talking with Franz, and I think that was like 45 minutes later, we had exhausted most of our small talk. I think we were comparing swear words in German and English at that point.
Oh, shame I missed that.
Right. Yeah. And I had a lot of coffee. And that's when Neil came back in, and he was quite triumphant, actually.
And I pulled this out of the tire.
Oh, my God.
Oh. Yep, and I've still got that screw.
Yeah, you're always going on about it. But okay, back to Franz-Josef in any case, which is the reason we're there. An issue we wanted to cover with him was just how vulnerable nuclear power plants are to climate change and particularly to droughts.
If we look to France now, something like half the nuclear power plants there have been down for various reasons. Some for maintenance, some because the river levels have been so low and they need the water for cooling. Against this backdrop of global warming and the droughts that we've seen, the Rhine has been very low this summer. How do you assess nuclear against this backdrop of global warming? Is there a risk that we might run into trouble?
They can't use this nuclear power plant when there isn't enough water, so they have to close for a short time. That's it. There are possibilities to have an option. I will show you. It's a Speicherbecken. It's between the river Ems and the Dortmund-Ems channel. And they used this water storage a few times.
Is this standard procedure or is Lingen special?
This is special for Lingen.
We've got to see this, right?
Right, yeah. Like I said, he'll take us.
You'll show us that, right?
Yeah, I will show you.
Excellent. We better finish up our coffee. And then But then, just as we were about to leave for the water reservoir, Franz-Josef showed us something, and it was quite a unique moment, right?
Yeah, in that moment, you could really feel his passion for this technology and for the science behind it.
This pellet, 2 of them, have the energy for...
That's a uranium pellet, is it?
It's not uranium, it looks like.
Okay.
But the size is correct.
Which is like a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter, right?
Yeah. Have the energy for one household for 1 year electrician power.
Like the size of my pinky nail, 2 of those. Well,
and you're sorted.
And that fascinates me. That's physics.
Here we are at the, I guess we're going to call it the reservoir, Lingen's reservoir.
It's really 260 hectares.
Oh, wow.
I think.
This is huge.
You can see it. It's like
That's quite a, oh, sorry. There's a beach.
And now, and we have sailing on this side, bars, and diving. You will see
diving,
some,
swimming.
Diving, windsurfing on that side. So that's it.
This is huge.
In the past, it was a wood, a forest.
A forest. And then it was artificially created as a backup, a safety net for the nuclear power plant. And this has never run dry, so even, in times of drought, there's always water in here.
It was always water in. Some years ago, the year before last year, it was 1 meter deeper.
Yeah. The wind turbines you can see on the horizon, right, behind this artificial lake. How do you feel about renewables?
I can say I like renewable. That's the future.
Yeah.
The problem is, at the moment, we can't storage it. To storage it, that's the goal and the task for the future.
Yeah.
When we can storage it, it's okay.
Yeah.
But we need time.
One other thing that sort of struck us, researching this series, a lot of sanctions have been slapped on Russia. All sorts of things, and now we're not buying the gas anymore through Nord Stream 2. It's mothballed, it's basically dead. There are no sanctions on uranium yet.
It's a decision from the EU. It's a political decision.
Because researching for this, there was one expert, Volker Quaschning, and I believe he was saying that Europe is actually more dependent on Russian uranium than on gas. He was saying it's 40% from Russia and Kazakhstan. And he was sort of saying it's actually quite a problem for us, and that is why there hasn't been an embargo on it yet.
My informations are 20% are from Russia, and it's possible to change it.
Okay. Would it bother you if we were using Russian uranium in Germany, given that they've attacked Ukraine and that we're putting so many other sanctions on them? Is that something we should be doing? Should we be phasing out Russian uranium?
For me, it's not a problem to do it, to shut it, to close it, to finish it.
Yeah.
I think it would be not a problem.
Do you think there's any chance at all that Germany will phase back in nuclear, that there'll be like a renaissance and nuclear energy will return to Germany?
I don't think so. I think this is only, we speak about a short time, like a bridge, really like a bridge.
Do you think that's a mistake? Do you think that's a mistake?
I see not the chance to put it back, that there will be a big renaissance. Could be because Switzerland, they will extend. The Belgian government decided, the decision is taken, they will extend. So other countries have other decisions like Germany. But I don't think that we will get a renaissance only when there was a big blackout, and I never wish a big blackout.
There's just one more thing that I'm really interested in, and it's got to do with the debate surrounding nuclear energy, because I've always had the impression that you talk to people and they're either vehemently for it or vehemently against it. And the middle ground, it's kind of tricky. There's some people who might be undecided, but generally it's very emotional, very ideological, the debate. Why is that? How do you feel about the ideological baggage that is in the debate?
For some people, it's like a religion. Really like a religion, and when we answer with facts, with numbers, with physics, nobody believes it or nobody will hear it, because there is a religion in their head. We are against nuclear power points. We are against it. That's it, like a religion, really.
How do you explain that? Because there are countries like Japan, where Fukushima happened, countries like Ukraine. Both these countries are still big on nuclear. Nuclear accidents never happened in Germany.
Yeah.
What's different about the Germans? Why are they so different?
Yeah, that's different between us and other countries, but I can't say why it is. Is it typical German? Is it German Angst? I don't know.
Well, at this point, I want to take a little bit of a step back here because, Neil, we've been talking a lot about ideology, about how this is a really divisive issue, this topic of nuclear in Germany, pros, cons, etc. But it might not be completely clear to listeners who aren't from Germany why a renaissance of nuclear is so unlikely to happen here in this country and why Franz-Josef doesn't think it's going to happen. So maybe we could take a quick look at how the nuclear phase-out came about here in the first place. I mean, because it was a really long process, right? A lot of ups, downs, twists, turns.
Yeah. I mean, basically the demise of nuclear power, it is very closely linked to the rise of Germany's Green Party, which began to emerge in the 1980s. And one of their main goals, always has been, was to get rid of nuclear power in Germany. And then after the Chernobyl accident in 1986, that anti-nuclear cause really took off. It was strengthened. But as a party, on the political level, the Greens, they still were rather small and weren't part of the government either. So they were always hovering around the 5 to 8% mark, I think, in the elections after Chernobyl. They got like 8%. But things did change, at the turn of the century. And about 20, 25 years ago, let's just also have a look at nuclear, the status quo of nuclear in Germany. I mean, back then there were still like 19 nuclear power plants, and these were responsible for about a third of Germany's power supply. So nuclear was still going very strong.
Hard to picture today.
Yeah, now it's like 6%, right? And it was still going very strong back then. But then in 1998, that's when things started to change dramatically, because a centre-left government consisting of the Social Democrats, led by Gerhard Schröder, by the way. Remember him?
Right.
The gas lobbyist?
Yeah.
Right? And the Greens came to power in 1998. Now, the Greens, they were the junior coalition partner, but they were in power, and they definitely weren't going to waste this opportunity. And so it was that government, that coalition government, decided to shut all nuclear power plants down by around 2021. And so construction of new commercial nuclear power plants and reprocessing facilities, all that was no longer permitted as of April 2002. So, the writing was really on the wall for nuclear then.
Right, but then, of course, the government changed again. And in 2010, a new coalition government of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, they pushed through an extension of Germany's nuclear power plants by up to 14 years.
And then only a year later, Fukushima happened, right? So 2011, Fukushima, and the government under Angela Merkel backtracked, and it was decided to phase out all nuclear power plants no later than 2022.
Right, that was Angela Merkel's famous so-called nuclear U-turn, right? New turn. I was working on that. I don't think that's going to work. Nuclear U-turn. And actually, some energy companies sued for compensation about that U-turn, and they actually won.
Yeah, but to be fair to Angie, she did have the public and the parliament behind her at the time, so it wasn't just like a solitary U-turn. But there were some very vocal critics in her own party who thought this was bad policy. But in the end, when it was put to the vote in the Bundestag, it was 513 parliamentarians that voted in favour of the early phase-out, and 79 were against, and 8 abstained. So very clear result. And also, if you look at the polls, the public in 2011 was also clearly for the phase-out. The polls showed that over 80% supported it, probably also because of Fukushima.
Okay, well, talking about these ups and downs and polls, if you look at the polls today, it's going the other way because of this energy crisis, right? Because current polls show that well over half of Germans would support a temporary extension of the last 3 nuclear power plants here.
This decision to extend these 3 nuclear power plants, it was very, very hard on the Green Party, which is, again, now part of the government, and they really had a hard time swallowing this extension. But they've also made it very, very clear that the red line for them is that there won't be any new nuclear fuel rods ordered for these power plants. So they really want to avoid these reactors just being extended and extended and extended. They really want to say, okay, April, that's the deadline.
We mean it.
That's it. This is just very, very temporary and very, very short term.
Yeah, and when talking about public opinion again, we obviously wanted to know what the residents of Lingen feel about nuclear power, living so close to a plant as they do. You can see the presence of the vapor cloud sort of constantly there. So, yeah, this is what they had to say.
I think that we should keep the nuclear power plant here in Lingen running. We'd have more energy then and wouldn't have to buy any electricity from other cities or countries. And that would ease the burden. I'm not scared of nuclear power or the risk. There's always risks in life. We could get hit by an asteroid here, or something else could explode. Today's power plants are modern, and I think I can rely on them being safe.
Well, actually, I have nothing against nuclear power. As far as I know, it's safe here. But I don't know that much about it, to be honest. All I've heard so far was positive, and that we need it right now to get through this energy crisis.
In the current situation, I think we need to let the remaining nuclear power plants run a little longer, until we've gotten through the energy crisis. But then we really need to phase out nuclear completely.
Eigentlich halte ich mich für einen Atomkraftgegner, aber ich muss ehrlich sagen...
Actually, I always considered myself an opponent of nuclear power, but to be honest, I feel a bit different about it now. The plant here in Lingen is one of the newest and safest nuclear power plants left in Germany. And maybe it would make sense to keep it running until the energy crisis is over. And afterwards, we can revisit the nuclear phase-out topic.
Die Diskussion neu aufliegt.
Also meine persönliche Meinung zu Atomkraft ist eher schlecht.
Well, my personal opinion on nuclear power is rather bad, simply because it makes me think of Chernobyl or Fukushima. But I still think it's better than letting the climate-damaging fossil fuel power plants run longer, simply because the biggest problem we have is the climate crisis. In my opinion, nuclear power is still the better solution at the moment. But in the long term, we need to switch completely to renewable energies.
And we also asked these citizens of Lingen whether they had changed their behaviour over the energy crisis and whether they were taking any precautions for the winter, just in case there is a blackout.
Normally my heating would be on by now, but I've kept it off to save energy. And there are other small things I do, like making sure the lights are off, or I don't leave the TV on, for instance. So yes, I have changed my behavior at home.
We are keeping a closer eye on the energy we use now. For instance, we have already turned the heating down and don't flip on every switch anymore. But personally, I also feel that there's a lot of blackout scaremongering going on, because we have enough energy supplies now to get us through the winter. And next spring, we will find new gas suppliers. So I think a lot is fear-mongering and money-making right now.
Things have changed. I've noticed, for instance, that this year's Christmas market won't have ice skating anymore, to save energy and because people can't afford it anymore. Many households are struggling to pay the high energy prices, especially low-income families with children. They're having a hard time right now.
Aber man hat schon so ein paar Maßnahmen dann zu Hause auch.
There are a couple of things I've changed at home, also with the kids. For instance, we keep the lights off as much as possible and have shorter showers. But that's about it. I'm still hoping that things won't be so bad this winter.
Ja, dass wir noch glimpflich davon abkommen.
Yeah, I mean, so what struck me in Lingen, people living within this radius of the nuclear reactor, which Alexander said is a critical radius, yeah, they didn't seem too concerned about the plant.
Yeah.
And I think most of them, I got the feeling that most of them were actually also really supportive of this extension because they're being very pragmatic about it in the sense that they were more worried about rising energy bills.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I was listening back to what they said, we were saying Germany as a whole had been so anti-nuclear, but the majority of the people we spoke to were in favor of a temporary extension. I was also struck by the fact that some of them said they don't really notice or think about the fact that the plant is there.
Yeah, almost as if it wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
But it is kind of tucked away. It's not as if it's, in the city centre or anything. It's sort of like in this forest cutout. I mean, you can't really see it if you're driving around. You have to look for it to find it, right? Yeah. So it is hidden away. You just do see the water vapor, that's all.
Yeah, it's just weird it's so controversial, but they don't even, and they're right there and they don't even think about it.
Yeah. I was expecting more drama in the precinct talking about nuclear, given what Alexander told us, about when back that accident that he was talking about and that how did he put it? the whole town, it held its breath.
Right.
And so I was anticipating a different response walking through the precinct, talking to people.
Yeah, fair enough.
But they were pretty laid back. And also regarding the blackout,
Mhm.
it didn't seem like they were, I don't know, frantically, buying up supplies or preparing for it or super worried about it. They seemed pretty laid back.
Pretty sanguine. Yeah, and talking about going through the city center there, I mean, it was, it's a small town, but it was really striking how nice it was, right? Like nice buildings and well kept, and you can tell there's money.
Okay, but the question still remains, is it really worth keeping the 3 remaining nuclear power plants and possibly extending them beyond April? Something that's also being discussed very controversially here in Germany. You have, one side, a lot of experts, getting all these studies and analysis out, and some say, oh yeah, this will, save us so and so much on energy pricing. Others say, no, it won't make a difference. It's very divided, very polarized. So we got our expert in on this, our resident expert for this series, right? And we put that question to Claudia Kempfert, the professor of energy economics in Berlin at the German Institute of Economic Research. And this is what she had to say.
Nuclear is insignificant in Germany. We're only producing 6% of electricity yet, so it's shrinking to 3% of electricity. It's not helping in the gas dilemma and the gas crisis, because if we use nuclear instead of gas, we only can replace 1% of the gas, because nuclear only produces electricity, but the gas power plants produce heat and electricity, half of them. So they are not needed, or they cannot be used for that. It's create a lot of costs, so we don't have a final waste disposal. It creates costs. We have to import also the uranium and the heating material that is needed, and the gain out of it is not very high. So the cost-benefit relationship is wrong, and this is why we not recommend to use and to apply nuclear further, to stop this discussion and really focus on real future technologies which are available, that is renewable energy.
You say that nuclear doesn't play a role because it just provides electricity, but at the same time, currently we are burning gas to produce electricity, which is exported to France. Isn't there a bit of a contradiction there?
Yeah, we are helping France right now because they have a nuclear problem. Half of the nuclear power plants are not in place, and because they have safety difficulties. And related to gas, yes, we are burning gas also to export electricity to France, but nuclear has only a very small share of it, and that cannot replace it to that extent which is needed now for France.
Well, a very clear statement from Kempfert about nuclear there. But what about the blackout threat this winter? For that, I want to bring in our second expert for this series, Fiete Wulff. He's from Germany's federal network agency, the Bundesnetzagentur, our neighbors. He knows all about Germany's power grid, how stable, how volatile it is, and this is what he had to say about that.
Deutschland hat nach wie vor eine der sichersten und zuverlässigsten Strom.
Germany still has one of the safest and most reliable power supply systems in the world. We have downtimes averaging around 10 minutes per consumer per year. There are few countries in the world that have a better value. And we have this high level of availability and this high level of security of supply, even though we have been greatly increasing the share of renewable energies for many years and phasing out nuclear energy.
Der erneuerbaren Energien stark erhöhen.
Assuming we have a very cold winter, I mean, just how great a risk are we running of a blackout?
Die Stromversorgung ist auf einen kalten Winter gut vorbereitet, ja?
The power supply is ready for a cold winter. Winter and cold winters occur regularly here in Germany. These are events that can be planned for. But what's challenging right now is that our French neighbours are having issues with their power plants, and we're exporting power to them as a result. The French heat much more with electricity than we do in Germany, which could also make things interesting this winter. If numerous risks start piling up, things could get difficult, even if grid operators are well prepared. But I think this is extremely unlikely. Also, power outages are not the same as a blackout, which is a large-scale and prolonged event, but the network operators would then react with controlled shutdowns of certain network areas and certain industrial customers. This is something that's been prepared meticulously by the network operators. But we mustn't forget that this situation is unprecedented in Germany.
Das sind Dinge, die wir in der Form in Deutschland in der Vergangenheit nie erlebt haben.
Perhaps just on a practical level, because it's also interesting, that this summer, a lot of consumers have been doing a lot of interesting things because also partly the media to blame has been scaring a lot of people into action. But I mean, for instance, mobile electric heaters, they were at times sold out in Germany this year. And also there are more electric cars and heat pumps installed in Germany this year. So the demand for electricity, it's rising, right? I mean, how big a threat to stability is it if people start switching on all these devices at the same time this winter?
Wir sehen auch, dass die Menschen in einer gewissen Sorge die Gasversorgung.
Some people who were concerned about the gas supply started to stock up on space heaters, and that's not a good idea. First of all, because it's very inefficient, and it would also be significantly more expensive to heat your home with fan heaters than with gas, even with the high gas prices we're seeing now. And it's also a bad idea because if everyone turns on their fan heaters at the same time, that can push the power grid to its limits regionally and beyond. Simultaneous energy consumption is always problematic. I once calculated that if every German turned on a hairdryer at the same time, the German power supply system would collapse. But of course, not all Germans blow dry their hair at the same time. But this could indeed become an issue with regard to e-mobility, which we want to expand and continue to expand strongly in Germany.
Den Stecker reinstecken würden und ihr E-Mobil aufladen würden.
Okay, Kristie, so when do you tend to dry your hair? What time is it?
That's private information. Yeah. A woman doesn't say that.
Well, see, I didn't even use a hairdryer, right?
Yeah, I can tell.
See, I'm not contributing to Blackout here. Anyway, Kristie, what's the bottom line for you from this episode? There's a lot of information, a lot of data we packed into this again. But what sort of really are your takeaways on this?
I think my main takeaway on this is how much the attitude about nuclear in Germany has shifted. Because I remember moving here 10 years ago and you seeing these stickers, which you still see everywhere, the ones that say Atomkraft, nein danke, so nuclear energy, no thanks. You see them everywhere, and I remember think, oh, this is a special German thing, like being anti-nuclear. And I think it's more like, nuclear energy, maybe today, so it's like a fundamental change. I mean, yeah, we were saying, I don't know if it will be long term, but at least in the short term, Germans are open to it. And I think they look around them, even here in Europe, and see other countries like France who are relying on nuclear so heavily. And I think they start wondering, with this crisis, why did we get rid of our plants?
Mm. But on the other hand, I mean, France is such an interesting example this year because of, half the plants being down,
right.
Them actually buying electricity from Germany right now, which we are giving to them by burning gas. So,
right.
I mean, this whole European dimension of how this all hangs together and the knock-on effects it has, it is kind of interesting, though, to see that Germany is bucking the trend, I think, in Europe. If you look at, the UK, they're still going with nuclear. France goes with nuclear. But there's also something we didn't really touch upon in this series at all. And I think, it's no coincidence that the countries that tend to, stick with nuclear, and I'm not talking about phase-outs, are the ones that also have nuclear weapons, right?
Sure, that's a great point.
So
yeah.
It is something that you also need for the military. And Germany never was on that page, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
After the war, it was clear nobody's going to trust Germany with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, we lost that privilege.
But I mean, on a personal level, Kristie, I think it became pretty clear throughout this episode how I feel about nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? You sort of, I don't know. You didn't really show me your cards on this.
Well, yeah, okay. Before I show my cards, I would say, would you say your stance changed on nuclear at all? Because you obviously have a very personal link to nuclear through your father's story, right?
Mm. No, I don't think it has.
Yeah.
I think I went into this episode and I came out the same pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the extension is right. And I wouldn't rule out another extension if we need it, because, we're already talking about the next winter being more problematic than this winter possibly regarding energy security. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think how I felt about it going into it was I hadn't given a lot of thought to nuclear energy. What I was concerned about actually was these reports about, energy facilities in Ukraine being targeted by Russia. And that did make me think, oh, wow, I'd never really considered nuclear energy facilities as a wartime risk. And then you do start thinking, imagine, you're France and you're at war with somebody, and it's like kind of a different picture then. But as we went through this series, I did feel more, I would say I maybe have the typical person living in Germany's stance right now. I felt, talking to Franz-Josef and talking about the science and safety of the plants, I don't have, they're already running anyway. I don't really have an issue with keeping them running if it means keeping the risk of blackouts off for the next few months. So, and we did have, we touched on a little bit the issue of nuclear waste, which we didn't, go into super deeply here, but that is definitely an unsolved issue that could get us back into a sort of like the plastic crisis on a much more dangerous scale, right? But anyway.
Yeah, that definitely is something I think that can't be emphasized enough, that there is no final repository for nuclear waste. This stuff is just, it has to be stored for so long, and we haven't got anything, or haven't found anything yet, not in Germany, not anywhere else, where there's a 100% guarantee that it's going to last.
Right.
So, yeah.
But
could shoot it to the moon, maybe. I don't know. If Elon Musk maybe build some rockets and shoot the stuff to the moon.
Just have a bunch of nuclear waste shooting around there. Yeah, sure. Well, in any case, I think it's time now, Neil, for us to reduce our energy consumption. Put this baby to bed.
Yes, but before we go, looking ahead to our next episode, we'll be exploring the role of renewables in Germany, and more specifically, we'll be diving into a wind park project in the fairy tale forest of the Brothers Grimm, and this project is turning into a bit of a nightmare for some of the locals and the man who's planning it.
This week's episode was produced with the help of Natalie Muller and Benjamin Ressel. Our sound engineer was Jürgen Kuhn, and we're always happy to get your feedback or perhaps some questions. Just email us at onthegreenfence@dw.com. Thank you so much for listening, rating, and sharing On the Green Fence. My name is Kristie Pladsen.
And my name is Neil King. Take it easy and take care.
On the Green Fence.